All right, hey guys, welcome to a TRS special. I have on here our friend Dr. Stephen Greer, who's the director and founder of the Disclosure Project. If you haven't looked at Disclosure Project, we're going to have the link in our show notes below. Check out Dr. Greer's work. It is, to me, the source to see what's actually really happening out there. Despite all the conspiracies and all the rumors that comes with this stuff, there is a solid archive of documents that back up some of these claims, and Dr. Greer has been leading that. We've been blessed to have him on the show before, and he's a big part of what we're doing on upcoming TV series, Shadow Figures. Dr. Greer, thanks for coming back on and joining us.
Great seeing you again, Chad.
I want to jump right into it. Doing the Shadow Figures show, and looking into a lot of this work, one of the things that really is on my radar right now is Project Bluebeam. Do you think do you think the government's recent disclosures that are coming out right now are part of a larger scheme to complete a Project Bluebeam?
Yes, I think what's happening with the gaslighting on the subject by operatives, let's call them the Rat Pack. There's a senior CIA guy I've been dealing with since the 90s who was the guy who actually briefed Ronald Reagan when he was going to run for president in 1979 on the UFO issue, because Ronald Reagan had had two sightings of these, one from the governor's plane when he was governor of California. And these operatives are people who go in, often after I'm in a skiff or a meeting with a member of Congress, and then provide false information, trying to present this as some kind of space threat or outer space threat. And then what they also do is try to convince government officials, as well as the media and the public, that the objects that are man-made, that are advanced technologies, that are anti-gravity, so-called, and others that are that we're doing various criminal activities with in covert programs, so-called deep state or secret government programs, that they'll always say those are alien when they're not. So that's the gaslighting. And the best way to do a blue beam type operation or false flag is to sort of put aside and block people in Congress or the White House from knowing what we have, right, and threatening them. I know members of Congress have told me they have been threatened for looking into what we have clandestinely, and then to portray everything going on out there as, quote, alien when it isn't. So it's a classic PSYOP, psychological warfare operation, and this was first conceived of in 1953. We have in our Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, which is dpiarchive.com, you will see, from the 50s, a CIA document where the director of the CIA, Director Smith, was talking about using the UFO subject for its psychological warfare value, right? And then, there's a admission by Dr. Jacques Vallée, who got pulled into this cabal of disinformation people in the 80s, where he said in 1985 document, this is in his book that he published in 92, he had a CIA document that describes using man-made UFOs abducting peasants in Argentina and Brazil, making it look alien when it wasn't, for its, quote, psychological warfare value. So, and then not long ago you had this face peeling, what happened in Peru, these horrible things that happened. When Grush started coming out, they came out with all this stuff. That was a PSYOP done by humans, covert forces that are working in this sector. It's a whole parallel government above the level of the president or Congress. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's something we can prove factually by whistleblowers and documents. So that is picking up steam. And I think we're really reaching, I think in the next 6 months to 2 years, it's going to happen unless some intervening act occurs, which we can talk about how we're trying to prevent that.
Talk about what a Project Bluebeam is. It's a false flag scenario to gain control of people.
Using things that look ET and they're not, right?
Right. So
Right.
what do you believe the motivation behind it is? And when we say the powers to be, or one who are
Yeah.
they, and why would they do a blue beam event?
Well, they're the usual suspects. I mean, the CIA uses the certain executives that they populate corporations with through BlackRock. I doubt you'll be able to put that in your TV show. It'd be taken out. But that's what got Tucker Carlson in a lot of trouble, by the way, by going into that vein. got kicked off Fox News. But the reality of it is that they have these technologies that they've been using since the 50s, masquerading as alien, ET, a non-human. And the technologies are fully developed, and so much so, the people I work with who are on retrieval teams out in the desert, out west, have told me that the man-made and the non-human extraterrestrial vehicles are almost indistinguishable at this point. It's gotten that advanced.
Right, because
So,
you're not denying that extraterrestrials exist. You're just
oh
saying.
no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, but I think of what the phenomenon that people see, it's 10 or 20%. And most of it is man-made, masquerading. And that's the essence of a false flag. You're setting up a decoy that deceives people, but for the purpose of it is so a sort of a global cabal of very powerful interests can militarize globally, not just in the U.S., the way people think and then control them. By there being a big emergency and a threat from outer space, they can unite all the world, not in peace and not in but in endless war. Like you have, instead of everyone looking at each other like Ukraine and Russia, or Israelis and Gazans or whatever, have everyone start to look out to space, unite everyone around an external threat. And remember, Werner von Braun, who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, came to America under Operation Paperclip at the end of World War II. The OSS brought him over. His spokeswoman for the last 5 years of his life is on our team, and he told her directly that this was the long-term plan, is to create a false threat from outer space so that these very powerful interests could unite the world not in peace or in prosperity or a golden era, but in endless war and control. Because when there's an emergency, look at 9/11, look at COVID, when there's a big emergency, people give up their intellectual discernment and they respond with fear. And in that state of fear, they can control the masses. And this is what demagogues have done for centuries. It's a bigger game now. It's a global game instead of, this city state or this nation doing it.
I've been following Three Eye Atlas,
Hmm.
and I am
Yeah.
blown away about the amount of information going out and how popular this topic of Three Eye Atlas is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then you have major news outlets, universities, Harvard University, NASA, major outlet, like they're putting information out, not even suggesting that it's alien, but also even giving their motive. So you have a object they're tracking in the sky on the other
Right.
side of our solar system, and they're saying it's a potential hostile alien attack.
Right. Well, that's
So
Avi Loeb, who is asking for $1 billion from Congress and has inveigled himself along with Elizondo and Dr. Kit Green and Dr. Hal Puthoff and Dr. Gary Nolan and other people who have been paid to do exactly what they're doing and saying. We know who they are, and we know who they're lying to and what they're doing. And by the way, each time they do that is a felony. And let me just put out a notice and a warning here. That's being tracked by a very senior law enforcement team. And there's no question that this is a criminal organization doing this, and there is a serious effort underway right now to document and bring that to heel. Now, ultimately, it will take an executive order and clearance from the president to roll on those interests, and that is something that is pending. But we know what they're doing, and it's a race to see whether the truth prevails or whether this clandestine organization gets away with its nasty little plan or not. I mean, it's really, I call it the battle for planet Earth happening right now.
what do you think Three Eye Atlas is?
Yeah, well, I have no inside information that's anything artificial. I will say this. We do know, and this is from a whistleblower who was a Delta Force guy out at the Skunk Works and Northrop test ranges up in the Mojave Desert, and his team. And I met with him 2 or 3 years ago, and he confirmed an account I had heard back in the 90s that this covert organization, using very advanced technologies, are able to move the trajectory of an asteroid or a space object into a pathway that could hit the Earth or come near it. In fact, he described an incident where they took one of these objects that was coming from the direction of the sun, so we didn't see it, and they moved it off of a trajectory that would have missed the Earth into a trajectory where it would have skimmed low altitude over the Atlantic and then Pacific Oceans to cause massive tsunamis and wipe out coastlines. And I had heard this years and years ago that we had that ability. Humans had that ability. So you always have to worry, when you have a group of unsupervised people that do not respond to the president or the Congress or I briefed the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency who had no access to those projects. You have a rogue group, let's call it, that are criminal, that might do God knows what. And I think the problem is, whether you're talking about the national security apparatus that's currently in place or Congress or in the Pentagon and CIA, let's call them the white hats, the people who are honest and patriotic, they have no idea the level of technologies that are in the hands of these psychopaths. That this Atlas asteroid, whatever it is, if it is something that is maneuvering strangely, it doesn't mean that it's alien. It could be something that we're affecting with technologies we have. And remember what Ben Rich said. I just want everyone, I'm going to tell you this. This is, everyone forgets this. Back in 1995, the president of the Lockheed Skunk Works was dying of cancer. And a friend of mine, James Goodall, who's a very renowned aerospace historian, spoke with Ben Rich on his deathbed and asked him about all this. And Ben Rich said, anything you can imagine that you have seen on Star Trek or Star Wars, we have it. It's not at Area 51. It's out in the desert with the skunk works and in underground facilities, which we now have mapped and know where they are, and those have been handed over to law enforcement. And those technologies are so advanced. And this was 30 years ago. And remember, technology doesn't stand still, it keeps going up. So imagine where it is now, if you look at the technology curve. So you have people who have immense technologies and power, way beyond that of a thermonuclear weapon. Unsupervised. This is dangerous. When I say this is the biggest national security problem that no one is really addressing properly, I mean it. It's way more dangerous than Russia and Iran or the Ukraine situation or the Israeli-Gaza situation. And yet it's kind of off the radar because it's not, I know, Mr. Hegsteth and Tulsi Gabbard are just learning about this. Kash Patel's just learning. Pam Bondi, the president, has very limited information on this. I can say this with some authority. So I just think that this is something that needs to have a real focus. And I think some events may be coming that will, if they don't do it through good advice we're giving, they're going to do it because they're going to be in trouble and they're going to have to be reactive. One of the things I recently put in a one-pager for the White House is that you don't want to be reactive to this. You want to be proactive. And that's something a businessman like Mr. Trump would understand. But I think that it's something where right now everyone is just, they're so busy with so many other things, which are legitimate, whether it's the economy or foreign relations or what have you. And this issue is so murky. It's like Congressman Burchett recently said, I'm giving up on disclosure. It's too confusing. And this is by design. Because whatever clarity any group like ours brings, there are all these other people that obfuscate it and confuse it. And, there are several members of Congress that were approached and told that I was a Russian foreign agent recently. I'm not kidding. And it's like, first of all, each time they did that, it's a felony because it's untrue. And they were trying to stop a House oversight investigation, right? And you get into the same situation with Arrow, this office at the Pentagon, that we've talked about that Dr. Kirkpatrick had, and they totally falsified and covered up all the important information and data they received in violation of the law. That's a felony. So you have a very large criminal organization that's partial government, partial private contractors on this issue that is completely off the leash and rogue. And it is dangerous. The reason it's so dangerous, Chad, and this is what no one's factoring in. Whatever you think we have technologically, bump it up several orders of magnitude. And everyone, what you don't want to do in a situation like this is underestimate your enemy, right? You know this. You're a Marine. If you vastly understate and you don't have enough intelligence. So what I'm worried about is that the U.S. government, Congress, the White House, the legitimate people at the agency or Pentagon, they don't have enough information about the technology end of what this organization has and what they're up against. And also, therefore, how something like a blue beam operation, a false flag, could be pulled off. And I was told in the early 90s, well, this was 1997, correction, we were doing briefings for members of Congress off-site. I've been doing this now 35 years. And as a young doctor, I was organizing this stuff. And Dan Burton, who was chairman of the House Oversight Committee, was there, all these sort of folks. He's the guy who issued 1,000 subpoenas to Clinton during that scandal. And you know what this whistleblower said is he had been on an interagency task force in 1974, early 70s, where he said we can hit a button and the sky would be filled with objects that everyone on Earth would be convinced were alien spacecraft and do all manner of terrifying things. And he says everyone from the president to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the man on the street to all the media would be completely deceived by it. And I knew this to be true. That night, so that we had a meeting with the whistleblowers the night before the meetings with members of Congress. And he was taken and vanished out of his hotel room that night, and left a note for my assistant that said, I've been asked not to discuss this any further till they can see if this can get fixed. That was 1997. But the technologies to pull this off, he was operational in around 1974, but he said that system was fully operational by the mid to late 60s. So one of the things people don't realize is that October 1954 is when we mastered gravity wave control, anti-gravity technology. And we started building in the late 50s and 60s man-made UFOs. We can prove this. In fact, one of the things people need to get, if they don't have it, we just released this. And it's a book that it's a big illustrated book of all the crash retrievals and major encounters, including the ones that are man-made, like the Tic Tac that went all over CNN and Fox. You know, we immediately identified it as a Lockheed operating platform, unmanned, but anti-gravity. And everybody's saying, oh, it's an alien spaceship. No, it's not. We have that same object documented from 1967 in Pennsylvania. We have a whistleblower who was present when it was being offloaded off a transport vehicle in 1991. We have another new whistleblower who's a Green Beret who saw it operational in Syria a few years ago in a covert operation. So
I think in a recent hearing at the end of September, an active duty sailor, Navy sailor, testified before Congress about a UAP, and it was actually a U.S. Navy senior chief Alexandro Wiggins, 23 years in, and he talked about a self-illuminating Tic Tac that possessed the ability to accelerate instantaneously, turn on a dime.
That's
that's one of your guys.
And that's one of our devices. What he saw was one of ours. Human. Yeah. When I say ours, human. Well, here's the problem: is that if you're a Navy guy or it's like Mr. Fravor, who was the F-18 Hornet pilot that encountered the Tic Tac off the coast of California. If you're read into the level of a jet aircraft or a steamboat, a ship, using 1800s to mid 20th century technology, which is all it is. These things that are zipping around, that are electrogravitic, that we've been working on with trillions of dollars of our tax dollars. I remember my uncle, his whole career was Northrop Grumman. He was a senior project manager. And he worked on the team that designed the lunar module, put the first man on the moon. And so these technologies have been around since literally before I was born. I just turned 70 in June. So one of the things I point out to people is that anytime an event happens, you have to go through sort of a critical thinking algorithm. Was it ours masquerading as alien, or was it actually non-human? And most people are not asking that question. And I can tell you, it's certainly anyone who begins to ask that question in the Congress or anywhere else, they get shut down and threatened and say, oh, you're going to expose a state secret. No, you're not, because those programs have been run illegally and unconstitutionally. This gets into a little bit of a sticky wicket. Let me tell you something we're dealing with. I have just received 6,000 or 7,000 pages of documents from military contractors and people involved with this. And one of the things they'll do, they'll hide, in a stovepipe, a top secret TSSCI, top secret special compartmented operation, the things dealing with UAPs, but they're within or attached to a legitimate legal program. And so you can get burned. There are senior Senate Intelligence Committee investigators and others that have gotten burned by going after something illegal and crossing into something legal and then being busted down for their security clearances. But that's a trap. And that in of itself, to hide an illegal operation by using a valid, legally overseen black project, because there are black budget projects that the president and the Congress oversee, that is in itself another crime. And so when I'm explaining to law enforcement, this is very complicated. And you need to be able to call them out and say, oh yeah, well, the fact that you have embedded within a stovepipe or a silo an illegal project within a legal one, that is even a worse crime. And we're getting into treason here, right? So, I don't mince words, as you know, but that's what's going on.
Dr. Greer, filming Shadow Figures, I really became intrigued with MH370. It was
Yep.
one of the episodes we have coming up. In fact, and working with Ashton Forbes, who I know you know. What's your take on MH370 when it comes to these spheres, the orbs?
Well, what you saw in that, now I'm going to say this predicated that footage is legit.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
have no,
Fair.
honestly, full disclosure, I don't have any source person that has confirmed to me that was footage that was from one of those platforms or drones filming this, right? That has to be investigated. This is why an investigation into this requires law enforcement and subpoenas, right? And this is what I'm recommending. But let's say it is what it's showing. I think it probably is. What you have are man-made spheres, and they are creating an Einstein-Rosen bridge where you can create basically a wormhole, an opening in space-time that, boom, objects disappear in and out of. Now, let's say that happened. Where then did this craft end up? Did it end up subsequently ending up somewhere else and fell apart, which some people think? Or did it just snap into, I hate to say this, another dimension, and it's stuck there? We don't know. But we do know that these spheres and these sort of objects absolutely are, now there are man-made ones and ET ones. That was a man-made one. And we know they have that capability. And I know a man who has collected a number of these spheres that are man-made. They're rather dangerous, actually.
Or do you talk about the components of it? Is it energy? Is it metal?
Yes.
Like what's
It's like a type of plasma
okay?
energy that creates a spherical area, and it can then create from that plasma a type of imploding zero point situation where you get this so-called wormhole effect that then creates this Einstein-Rosen bridge that can go poof, have something. And this deals with quantum entanglement, all kinds of physics that are probably beyond the scope of a general audience show. But yeah, we understand how those work. And now, similarly, an ET craft can be in one place and by using similar technology, teleport to another one instantly. So
Right.
we're dealing with very advanced technology. But anything that,
Include interdimensional.
yes.
Yes.
Remember, all interstellar civilizations are also trans-dimensional. So you hear these, people say, "Oh, it's interdimensional." No, it's extraterrestrial. Well, I got news for you. You're not going from way out in space to here. without being able to drop out of linear space-time, which means you're traversing other dimensions. So much so, they could actually be in our atmosphere and be dematerialized in another dimension, and you would never see it or sense it. And then it can pop into 3D. So we understand how that works, and that capability has been studied since at least the 40s and 50s. We had a man who's one of our whistleblowers who's passed away, Fred Threadfeld. He's in our disclosure archive. That was at an Air Force base in Canada in 1953, where they had a box, an electromagnetic system, and everyone smoked cigarettes back then. And they had an ashtray, big ashtray, those giant glass ashtrays. They would put on this thing and teleport it to the other end of the base, miles away instantly, and teleport it back. 1953. So whatever, again, I know it sounds like science fiction to most listeners, but just remember, 8 to 12 trillion dollars or more in black budget funding going into studying operational ET technologies. You're going to hit pay dirt, right? You're going to, and I will also say, the scientists I know who've worked those programs, they're curated and selected for extremely high IQ and special abilities in physics and engineering, especially electromagnetic. And I know several of them, and these are guys that I go, oh my God, these guys have IQs north of 200. And
Not to
those
mention
are,
if they do have extraterrestrials too.
yeah, I doubt that. I mean, they have captive ones. Now, one of the big problems is we have multiple whistleblowers who have been on the crash retrieval teams.
Well, that's what I mean. That if they have some captured ones, can they get garner technology?
Yeah, they've tortured them and have tried to get information from them. Yes, and there are currently a number of ETs at certain bases underground that are being kept captive even now. And the strike team that I've been talking to, one of the chief things we want them to do is to liberate. If you get a Green Beret to give you their thing, it says to liberate the oppressed. I said, well, there are some non-human beings that are being held and are being tortured that need to be liberated.
Yeah. So I don't want to miss this. The spheres from MH370. That's not the only phenomenon we've seen this take place at. Would
Right.
you link this to things like as similar to like the nuclear test after World War II? Are these like the same spheres?
Well, it's there, yes, but those were non-human checking us
Oh,
out, right?
okay.
These are human doing some operation. Now, between well, they were called Foo Fighters, remember?
Hmm.
There's a band called the Foo Fighters, but they got their name from the Foo Fighters of World War II, which were these luminous plasma-like objects zipping around our aircraft. So you want to hear a cool story, how the Foo
Yeah.
Fighter name came about? A medical doctor friend of mine, much older than I am, he's passed away, Dr. John Altshuler in Denver, a hematologist, pathologist. His uncle was General Jimmy Doolittle, very famous World War II general, if you know your history. And President Roosevelt sent General Doolittle over to the European Theater of Operations to look into what the hell were these Foo Fighters. And because we had encounters with them, but then we learned, initially we thought it had to be a secret Nazi weapon, right? But then we learned through counterintelligence the Nazis thought it was a secret Allied weapon, and it wasn't ours. We knew it wasn't ours. And so General Doolittle went over there and investigated these spherical things and came back and told President Roosevelt, and I'm quoting, "Sir, those are interplanetary vehicles." This is before 1945. And that's where Foo Fighters came from. The Foo was sort of an anglicized version of faux, F-E-U, for fire, like a ball of lightning or fire. And then it became Foo. And then a rock band got named the Foo Fighters. But I tell a lot of kids, I said, do you know how you got this name, Foo Fighters? Because they're a huge rock band, massive.
Oh yeah,
Huge.
yeah.
Because Dave Grohl used to be in Nirvana, right? And
Okay.
yeah, I was at some place with him. But anyway, so what I tell people is that remember, this goes back a long time, this phenomenon. I have a dissection picture of an ET being carved up on a dissecting table from the 20s.
One of the things that I've also had a lot of interest in was these underwater craft or underwater UAPs. Recently, I think it was Tim Burchett had statements to receive reports of unidentified water objects 150 yards long that could go hundreds of miles an hour. Or these also ours?
There are
Yeah.
man-made ones and there are ET ones. We know there's a deep underground base off the coast of Guam near the Marianas Trench. We have a whistleblower who was a Coast Guard guy, had a top secret clearance. They were called out on a mutual assist by the Marines because a Japanese trawler had caught one of these objects in their huge nets. And they went there to retrieve it, and that's in our archive. And the guy is named, his credentials are in there, and we know that they're non-human ET ones, but they're also human ones because pretty much anything that you can see that an ET has done that we've observed for over 80 years now, right? That has been, let's say, uh, simulated or reproduced, and that's why the early man-made UFOs were called ARVs, Alien Reproduction Vehicles. And we started building those in the 50s. So now you can imagine by now we have technologies and craft that would mimic any type of ET object. Let me give you a good example. You've always heard about these big triangular craft that are like
Right.
3 football fields on each side, 800 feet on each side. There are extraterrestrial ones that are like that. The majority of the ones people see, and you'll hear a transformer type sound, is they're an electrogravitic and they're made by Raytheon and Northrop Grumman. And they're used in all kinds of clandestine operations. So, and they can go from hover to over the horizon like a spark off a flying wheel in 1 or 2 seconds. We're talking hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. And without a sonic boom, because of the way the technology's created its own bubble in space-time, boom. So this all is something which, if you're in the national military command structure, an intelligence structure, and you don't know that there's a rogue group that has this ability,
Yeah.
you have at least both your feet and one of your arms tied behind your back. Or it's the blind leading the blind. And this is my big concern. I left my medical career over this. No, I didn't. I literally left my medical career because when I learned in 1990s that the president of the United States and the CIA director and these kind of people were being denied access to something this important, I realized this is the biggest constitutional crisis in the history of the United States that nobody is acknowledging. And so that's where we are now. Whether or not the current administration and Congress will come to the unravel this, I don't know. There are all kinds of powerful interests that don't want them to. And it'll ultimately come down, unfortunately, to politics. Not partisan politics, but just plain power politics. Like who gets threatened, who gets bought off. Most presidents, when they learn enough about this, decide to kick it down the road to their successor, right? That's been going on since Kennedy got killed. I mean, Jack Kennedy was killed over this issue, and there's no question. And, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and I have had a conversation about that. And I introduced him to a few of our special forces and whistleblower guys. But almost certainly his father, the former Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and JFK were killed over this specific issue.
Yeah, we talk about this. This is another thing in shadow figures. Our shadow figure expert that we speak to, he brings this up. This is, the program that Director Dulles of the CIA at the time was working on that the president wanted access to, and he didn't want the president to have access to it. And
Right.
he fired Director Dulles and
Yep.
kept pushing, and it ultimately was the cause, probably of many, but one of the causes of them assassinating the president.
Yeah, and remember a year before they killed Marilyn Monroe over this. I've got the top secret document from CIA. It's not uncontested and not declassified. I published it because it's part of an illegal operation. By the way, any whistleblowers out there, you've signed NDAs, forget it. If you have been attached to this subject, you've been attached to an illegally run, treasonous, and unconstitutional program, so they cannot go after you at all. Forget about even if the Congress passes this whistleblower protection part of the National Defense Authorization Act. It's a matter of law that we have proven that these programs are criminal and illegal. Anyone who worked in them, your NDAs are vitiated, neutralized. And
And you've
that's
had
how I've gotten
close to
these
a thousand
guys come.
now.
Yeah,
You've had close to 1,000 whistleblowers now.
yeah. Oh, yeah, we do. And you can't have it both ways. You can't say, we're going to break the law and commit treason and high crimes against the U.S. government and then use the U.S. law to prosecute people. You can't have it both ways. So once this group in the late 50s decided to go outside the rule of law and betray Eisenhower, which is when this went sideways, that Katie barred the door. They have no legal protection. And I'm very aggressive about the statement that instead of all these good whistleblowers being picked off and intimidated, we need to turn and go after those guys. Why don't we have our, like Kash Patel listening, you need to authorize at all means to go after these criminals because it's way worse than the Venezuela drug cartels. It's way worse than the MS-13 gangs in the country. It's way worse. It's the biggest internal threat to the national security of the United States in the history of the United States. I will say that as a fact I can prove.
Dr. Greer, I know you're short on time. I have one more question, and then I want to leave it up to you let us know what everything that's current and going on.
Yeah.
But you are so. I mean, that what you primarily have focused on is in the Disclosure Project is government involvement in reverse engineered UAPs but one of the things I love talking about you is you so flippantly talk about extraterrestrials like not even a question like or extraterrestrials real you like say it like it is a sky blue and so with you carry yourself with such confidence on that subject. What evidence is there for those listening that you have had at the Disclosure Project that you could kind of give a solidified statement that extraterrestrials are in fact real?
Well,
Everyone
yes, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. And I don't mind being challenged at all. First of all, people should go see the movie we did, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and you'll actually see a human team making contact with, and even pictures of ETs on the ground with us. Secondly, look at the whistleblower testimony and information. A lot of it that's in this book, and you can get a soft cover copy of it. And it actually name, rank, serial number, locations, dates of where we have downed these ET craft, retrieved both living and dead non-human beings, what are called extraterrestrial biological entities. And I have debriefed dozens of these kinds of guys, and multiple of them are in here and in our archive. Now, so let's go all the way back to the 60s. And he was a wonderful man who passed away, Sergeant Clifford Stone, and he was embedded in an NBC team, a nuclear, biological, chemical team, a military team. But they were a specialized area that would go in when there was a downed ET craft that we had downed with a electromagnetic pulse weapon, and which is how we're doing it, by the way. And then he handled both living and dead extraterrestrial vehicles. He's on the record. He's disclosed all of his DD-214, everything. We have multiple people like that of high military and intelligence credentials, as well as government contractors working for these companies like Lockheed and Northrop that have prior to that. Now, on top of it, as I mentioned, I have a photograph from the 20s of a dissection of an ET on a slab, which came to us from a woman who had worked at Roswell back in the 40s, and that apparently was brought in once those three craft were downed in 1947. So there's no question that they exist, and our own group, I personally have been present on many occasions where we have vectored and invited these ET craft to come in. They've come in, and sometimes there have been ET beings that have just sort of teleported, bang, right there in front of us. And you want to see those, go look at Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's free. You can see it on Amazon Prime or Tubi or anywhere. But, I tell people, do your homework, and we have terabyte after terabyte of evidence like this in our archive, but it's a lot to go through, but it's organized by crash retrievals and all this stuff. So government documents. So we've spent, in the last couple of years, over $500,000 putting all that together and digitizing it. And it's for free. You don't have to pay a subscription or anything. It's for anyone who wants to see it. We're giving it to the world to get the information out.
I could testify to actually seeing images on your personal cell phone, so I could
Yeah, yeah.
validate a little bit. I mean, I know we're running out of time because you have
We're
a social
good. Yeah, yeah,
platform, but
we got a little more time. It's fine.
I'd
Yeah.
love to hear you talk about what's important to you right now. What's the new things going on that we should know about?
So just in the past month, we've gotten the intel back on this weird, it's called Buga Sphere, Buga sphere, that was found in Buga, Colombia, South America. It landed last March, and I first saw it personally in June, and I took Congressman Burleson, who's on the House Oversight Committee there, and now we've done the research on it, and this thing is carbon dated to 12,560 years ago. And it's an electrogravitic anti-gravity sphere that was spinning and moving all through the atmosphere that touched or got near a high voltage wire, and it shorted out and landed. It didn't crash, it just landed, and a guy in Colombia, in Buga, B-U-G-A, Colombia, picked it up. So this is a bona fide non-human object. And when it first landed, it weighed about 2 kilos. Now it weighs 10. And the reason for that is that if you understand the science behind electrogravitic high voltage systems, they actually cause a mass cancellation effect, weightlessness effect. That's what real anti-gravity effect is. And so when it first landed, it took about a month for it to get to its normal weight again. And now I picked it up. It's 10 kilo. So we've also just gotten the metallurgy samples back. I sent that to you the other day, texted it to you, this report, and my summary. And those metal samples indicate it's an alloy that doesn't match any known alloy, but it's mostly aluminum and then a lot of rare earth elements, some of which were not even discovered until the late 1800s and 1900s. But this thing is 12,560 years old. It's basically 8,000 years older than the pyramid, the Great Pyramid at Giza. So at this point, you have to go, what is this? Now, the thing that's a bit ominous, we now have 5 videos of 5 separate Buga spheres that have been filmed in this general area of Colombia, South America. And the question is, why are they suddenly being activated? Well, one of those, and it's a bit ominous, I think it's an early warning signal, because in 12,560 years ago was an era that ended the Ice Age, and some people think it might have been the Great Flood and things like this that are accounted in the Bible. But there was some cosmic event that happened that was a big Earth sort of geophysical event. And that is when they're dated from. And all of a sudden, while there's all this going on with the magnetic field over South America and the South Atlantic and Africa becoming unstable, if you look it up, it's called the SSA, that these all being activated all at once is a bit of worrisome. Now, the other interesting, there are symbols on it, and 2 separate linguistic teams independently concluded it was a type of Proto-Sanskrit. Now remember, Sanskrit is the root of all Indo-European languages, and this is a type of Proto, and when they translated it, it was vaguely saying a warning of some cosmic event and some sort of big earth change event. So I think this is a warning. I think that this is probably one of the most important things ever recovered that's still in civilian hands, right? It's in Mexico City now. And you know, the night I was before I was going to leave, and I'd been there with Congressman Burleson, and you know, we had security and all that. The Buga Sphere is being held in a vault. There were 2 federal police who we have been able to identify as members of the drug cartels embedded in the federal that tried to break in Mexico and try to break in and steal the Buga Sphere right there when we were there. I wasn't in the facility, I was nearby. And when I reported this and warned about it on TikTok, the TikTok took my channel down. I have been deplatformed off TikTok for exposing that clandestine attempt to steal the Buga Sphere. Go figure out what's TikTok, right? Who's behind that, right? Why would they take that down, right? It was a simple statement of fact. We had the video footage. Now, I have had one of the those police officers identified, as one of these cartel members, but they're part of the federal police force and they do black bag jobs. And just also remember, the same organization running these clandestine UFO projects utilize drug cartels, criminal cartels, human trafficking cartels, and other drug running to not only create a wealth and flow of money to them. This is where there's a nexus between human trafficking, drugs, etc., and the UAP issue that's actually being explored by law enforcement right now. And I think that's something for people to keep in mind. They are interrelated. But so that I think is one of the most amazing. We're actually going to do a new documentary about the whole Buga Sphere and what's going on with disclosure. And we're basically going to go from, past, present, future of what we know is happening and coming. And it's going to be an amazing blockbuster documentary. We're trying to get funding. If people want to help with funding, they can go to our website and make a contribution.
Yeah, and we'll have the links in the show notes below. People find their way there.